I am 28 years old. I am a woman. The Thanksgiving turkey was still warm on the table when my aunt started to cry. Her tears were loud and ugly. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of anger. She pointed a shaky finger at me from across the dining room. My Uncle David sat next to her, patting her back. He looked angry, too. My cousin Sarah stared at her plate. She did not want to look at anyone. The rest of the family just watched. They did not know what to do. "You stole my rightful inheritance," my Aunt Karen sobbed. Her voice filled the room. It was sharp and accusing. "You took everything that was supposed to be mine." I looked at her. I did not say anything at first. I just held my fork. My grandmother, Eleanor, had passed away 2 months ago. The funeral was hard. Reading the will was harder. Now this. This was the worst of it all. I knew this was coming. I had been waiting for it. I just did not think it would happen on a holiday. I did not think she would do it in front of everyone. "Karen, that is not true," I said. My voice was quiet. I wanted to keep it steady. I did not want to cry like she was crying. "You know what Grandma's will said." "I know you manipulated her," she screamed. She stood up from her chair. The chair scraped against the wood floor. "You were with her every day. You whispered poison in her ear. That house was promised to me. For years, she promised me that house." My Uncle David stood up too. He put his arm around my aunt. He glared at me. "Your aunt is right," he said. His voice was low and threatening. There were understandings. Family understandings. "You came in at the end and took advantage of a sick woman." I put my fork down. I could not eat anymore. My stomach felt like it was full of rocks. For 5 years I had taken care of my grandmother. I moved in with her after my own parents passed away. She needed someone. I was happy to do it. I cooked for her. I cleaned for her. I took her to her doctor appointments. I read to her at night. It was not easy. Her illness was long and slow, but I loved her. She was the only family I really had left. My mother, her sister, would have wanted me to be there. My Aunt Karen visited sometimes. She would come for an hour. She would bring cheap flowers and complain about her own life. She would ask my grandmother for money. She always asked for money. She never offered to help. Not once. She never stayed overnight. She never took Eleanor to a single appointment, but she always talked about the house. She talked about it like it was already hers. She would walk through the rooms and talk about what color she was going to paint the walls. My grandmother would just smile a sad smile and change the subject. "Grandma made her own decisions," I said to my uncle. "She was very clear about what she wanted. Her mind was sharp until the very end. You know that." "We will see about that," Uncle David said. He pulled Karen closer to him. "We will see what a judge has to say about it." The threat hung in the air. A lawsuit. He was threatening to take me to court. He was threatening to drag my grandmother's memory through the mud, all for a house they did not deserve, a house they had not earned. My other uncle, Mark, my father's brother, cleared his throat. He was a quiet man. He did not like conflict. "David, Karen, this is not the time or the place," he said gently. "We are here to have a family dinner. Let's not ruin it." "She already ruined it," Karen wailed. "She ruined everything. She took my mother and then she took my home." That was it for me. The accusation that I had somehow taken her mother was too much. I had been the one holding Eleanor's hand when she took her last breath. I had been the one to cry real tears of sadness. Karen had shown up at the hospital hours later, already talking to David about the value of the property. I stood up. My hands were shaking a little, but my voice was not. "I think you should leave," I said. I looked directly at Karen and David. "This is my house now, and I will not let you disrespect Grandma's memory in it." The room went silent. No one had expected me to say that. I had always been the quiet one, the one who tried to keep the peace. But something inside me had snapped. My grandmother had been a kind and generous woman. She deserved better than this. Karen gasped. She looked like I had slapped her. "Your house," she whispered. Then her voice got loud again. "My mother's house." "The will was read, Karen," I said. "You were there. You heard what it said. Mr. Henderson read it very clearly. The house belongs to me. You received a generous amount of money, more than you deserve, I think. Uncle David took a step toward me. You watch your mouth, he said. Uncle Mark stood up then. He was taller than David. He put a hand on David's shoulder. That is enough, he said, his voice firm. She asked you to leave. I think you should. We can talk about this another time, when everyone is calm. David looked from me to Mark. He knew he could not win a physical fight with Mark, and he knew that everyone else in the room was uncomfortable. They were all looking at him and Karen. They were seeing the greed that I had seen for years. He grumbled something under his breath. He took Karen's arm and pulled her toward the door. This is not over, he said to me over his shoulder. This is far from over. Karen was still crying as they left. They were loud, dramatic sobs. She wanted everyone to see how much she was suffering. She wanted them to think she was the victim. When the door slammed shut, the silence they left behind was heavy. My cousin Sarah, their daughter, was still sitting at the table. She looked miserable. I am sorry, she mumbled. My mom, she is just upset. I know, I said. I did not want to be angry at Sarah. She was caught in the middle. It is not your fault. She stood up. I should go, she said. I will get a ride. She left quickly, without saying goodbye to anyone else. The rest of the dinner was quiet and awkward. We tried to make small talk, but the fight had ruined everything. The beautiful meal I had spent 2 days preparing was now cold. No one had much of an appetite. I felt a deep sadness settle over me. This was my first Thanksgiving without my grandmother. I had wanted it to be a day of remembering her, of being thankful for the time we had. Instead, it had turned into a showcase of greed and bitterness. After everyone had gone, I sat alone in the quiet house. It was a big house, full of memories. I could almost hear my grandmother's laughter in the other room. I missed her so much, it was a physical ache in my chest. I looked around at the furniture she had loved, the photos on the walls. This was my home. She had wanted it to be my home. She had told me so many times. You have a good heart, Lily, she used to say. This house needs a good heart in it. I thought about Karen's words. You stole my rightful inheritance. Was it possible that my grandmother had promised her the house? I did not think so. Eleanor was not the type of person to make a promise and then break it. But Karen had sounded so sure, so convinced. I went into the small office where my grandmother kept her important papers. I had a copy of the will. Mr. Henderson, her lawyer, had given it to me. I unlocked the desk drawer and took out the thick envelope. My hands trembled as I pulled out the document. I had read it before, of course, but now I was looking for something different. I was looking for a loophole. I was looking for anything that could give Karen a claim. I read through the legal language slowly. It was all very clear. The house and all its contents were left to me, Lily Evans, her granddaughter. There was a separate bank account with a large sum of money that was to be given to her daughter, Karen Miller. There were smaller gifts for other relatives, including Uncle Mark and Sarah. It all seemed straightforward. I felt a wave of relief. It was just as I remembered. There was nothing in there about a prior promise. There was no room for interpretation. The house was mine. Karen was just being greedy. But then my eyes fell on a small clause near the end. It was a single sentence, tucked away in a section about final arrangements. I'd read it before, but it had not seemed important at the time. Now it stood out to me, it said. The final disposition of the contents of my safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 312, is to be handled solely at the discretion of my granddaughter, Lily Evans. A safety deposit box. My grandmother had never mentioned a safety deposit box. I had no idea what was inside it. The will did not say. It just said that I was in charge of it. What could be in there? More money, jewelry, old letters. A cold feeling crept over me. What if Karen knew about this box? What if something in that box supported her claim? Maybe there was a letter. Maybe there was an older version of the will. My mind started to race with possibilities. The fight at Thanksgiving was bad, but what if it was just the beginning? What if my aunt had a reason to be so confident? I knew I had to find out what was in that box. I had to know for sure. The will gave me the power to handle it. That meant I had the right to open it. I decided then and there. First thing on Monday morning, I would go to the bank. I needed to know what secrets my grandmother had left behind, and I needed to be prepared for whatever was coming next. The peace of my new life depended on it. The weekend was long and quiet. I spent most of it cleaning the house, trying to keep my mind busy. Every time the phone rang, I jumped, thinking it would be Karen or David, ready to start another fight. But they did not call. The silence was almost worse than the yelling. It felt like they were plotting. It felt like they were getting ready for a war. I talked to my best friend, Chloe, on Saturday. I told her everything that had happened at Thanksgiving. She was just as angry as I was. "I cannot believe she did that," Chloe said over the phone. "In front of the whole family. She has no shame." "She wants the house, Chloe," I said. "She wants it so bad she is willing to destroy the family to get it." "It is not her house," Chloe said fiercely. "Your grandmother gave it to you? You were the one who took care of her. You deserve it." "I know," I said. "But she is making me doubt myself. She was so sure. She kept saying it was promised to her." I told her about the clause in the will, the one about the safety deposit box. Chloe was silent for a moment. "That is strange," she said finally. "Why would your grandmother not just list the contents in the will?" "I have no idea," I said. "That is what is worrying me. What if there is something in there that changes everything?" "Like what?" she asked. "An old will? A letter promising Karen the house? I do not know. My mind is going crazy thinking about it." "Okay, first of all, stop," Chloe said. "You are spiraling. Do not let her get into your head. That is what she wants. She wants you to feel scared and uncertain." "It is working," I admitted. "Listen to me, Lily," she said, her voice serious. "You are going to the bank on Monday. You are going to open that box, and whatever is inside, you will deal with it. You are stronger than you think. You took care of Eleanor for 5 years. You can handle your crazy aunt." Her words helped. Chloe always knew how to make me feel better. She was right. I needed to stop worrying about the what-ifs. I needed to face this head-on. I needed to know the truth. On Monday morning, I woke up early. I got dressed in a nice outfit. I wanted to look confident, even if I did not feel it. I gathered all the necessary paperwork, my grandmother's death certificate, my copy of the will, and my own identification. I put them all in a large envelope. I felt like I was preparing for a battle. The drive to the bank was nerve-wracking. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel. I kept replaying the scene from Thanksgiving in my head. Karen's face, twisted with rage. David's smug, threatening look. I had to be ready for them. First National Bank was an old, imposing building downtown. It had tall stone columns and heavy brass doors. It felt serious and important. I took a deep breath and went inside. The inside of the bank was quiet and cool. I walked up to the information desk. A kind-looking woman with gray hair smiled at me. "How can I help you today?" she asked. "I need to inquire about a safety deposit box," I said. My voice was a little shaky. "It belonged to my grandmother. She passed away recently." "I am sorry for your loss," the woman said. "Do you have the box number?" "Yes," I said. "It is numbered 312. She typed something into her computer. "Eleanor Evans?" she asked. "Yes, that is her," I said. "And you are?" "Lily Evans, her granddaughter. I am the executor of this part of her estate." I pushed the envelope with the documents toward her. "I have the will and the death certificate right here." She looked at my identification and then at the papers. She read the clause about the safety deposit box carefully. She nodded. "Everything seems to be in order," she said. "Please have a seat. I will get the bank manager. He will have to assist you." I sat down on a plush chair and waited. My heart was pounding in my chest. This was it. I was about to find out what was in the box. I was about to learn if my aunt was telling the truth, or if she was just a liar. After a few minutes, a man in a sharp suit came out. He introduced himself as Mr. Miller, the bank manager. He was polite, but very professional. He led me through a heavy steel door and into a vault. The air in the vault was cold and still. The walls were lined with hundreds of small metal doors, each with a number. "This way, Miss Evans," he said. He walked to a section of the wall and stopped in front of a box labeled 312. "We will need your key." I stared at him blankly. "My key?" I asked. "I do not have a key. I did not even know this box existed until a few days ago." Mr. Miller frowned. "That is a problem," he said. "There are 2 keys required to open any box. The bank has one, and the owner has the other. We cannot open it with just our key." My heart sank. "So I cannot open it?" I asked. I felt a surge of panic. I had come all this way. I had gotten my hopes up. "It is not that simple," he said. "If the key is lost, we have to drill the lock. It is a security procedure. It is quite expensive, and we have to schedule it with a specialized locksmith." "How expensive?" I asked. "Several $100s," he said. I sighed. I did not have several $100s to spare. The money from the will had not been released yet. I was living on my savings. "Is there any other way?" I asked. "Are you sure she did not leave the key with the bank?" "I am certain," he said. "We would have a record of it. The key is issued to the owner. It is their responsibility." I felt defeated. It was another dead end, another obstacle. It felt like Karen was winning, even without being there. I thanked Mr. Miller for his time and left the vault. As I walked out of the bank, my mind was racing. Where could the key be? My grandmother was a very organized person. She would not have just lost something so important. She must have put it somewhere safe, somewhere I would find it. I drove back to the house, feeling more frustrated than ever. When I got home, I started to search. I looked everywhere. I went through every drawer in her desk. I checked all of her old purses. I looked in her jewelry box. I even went through the pockets of all her coats in the closet. Nothing. The key was nowhere to be found. I sat down on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by her things. I felt like crying. It was all too much. The fight with my aunt, the pressure of settling the estate, and now this stupid missing key. I decided to call Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. Maybe he knew something. He had been my grandmother's lawyer for over 30 years. If anyone knew her secrets, it would be him. I dialed his number. His secretary put me right through. "Lily, how are you?" he asked. His voice was calm and reassuring. "I am okay." "Mr. Henderson," I said, "but I have a problem." I explained everything. The clause in the will, my trip to the bank, the missing key. He was silent for a moment after I finished. "I see," he said. "Eleanor did like to be mysterious." "Do you know where the key might be?" I asked, a sliver of hope in my voice. "Did she ever give it to you for safekeeping?" "No, she did not," he said. "She was very clear that she wanted you to be the one to handle this. She trusted you completely." That made me feel a little better, but it did not solve my problem. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "The bank wants to charge me hundreds of dollars to drill the lock." "Do not do that just yet," he said. "Let's think about this. Eleanor was a creature of habit. She had a place for everything. If she wanted you to find that key, she would have left it somewhere you would look. But I have looked everywhere," I said in frustration. "Her desk, her jewelry box, her purses. It is not there." "Think, Lily," he said. "Was there a special place she kept things? A place that was just for her?" I thought hard. My grandmother had her routines. She had her favorite chair where she would read. She had her favorite teacup. And she had her garden. She loved her garden more than anything. But she would not have buried a key in the garden. Then an image popped into my head. It was a memory from when I was a little girl. My grandmother was showing me a book. It was a very old book with a leather cover. It was her favorite book of poetry. "This book holds many treasures," she had told me, her eyes twinkling. At the time, I thought she meant the poems. But what if she meant something more? "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice suddenly excited. "I think I know where it might be." "Good," he said. "Call me back when you find it. And Lily, be careful. Your aunt is not going to give up easily." "I know," I said. Thank you for your help. I hung up the phone and ran to the living room. The bookshelf was filled with books. My grandmother was an avid reader. I scanned the shelves, looking for the old leather book. I found it on the top shelf, tucked away behind some newer paperbacks. My heart was pounding as I took it down. It was heavy in my hands. The leather was worn and soft. I opened the cover. The pages were yellowed with age. I carefully turned them, my fingers tracing the lines of poetry she had loved so much. And then I saw it. There was a hollowed-out section in the middle of the book. It was a perfect, small square cut out of the pages, and nestled inside that square was a small, brass key. It was attached to a simple paper tag. On the tag, in my grandmother's elegant handwriting, were 2 words: for Lily. I lifted the key out of the book. It was real. It was finally in my hand. I felt a surge of triumph. I had found it. I had passed some kind of test she had set for me. Now I could finally open the box. Now I could finally get some answers. I had a feeling that whatever was inside that box was going to change everything. I just hoped it would be for the better. The next morning, I went back to the bank. I felt much more confident this time. I had the key. I had the power. I walked straight to the information desk. The same woman from the day before was there. She smiled when she saw me. "You are back," she said. "I found the key," I said, holding it up for her to see. She looked pleased. "I am so glad," she said. "Let me get the manager for you." Mr. Miller came out again. He looked surprised to see me so soon. "Miss Evans," he said, "you found it." "Yes," I said. "It was in a safe place." He nodded and led me back to the vault. The process was the same as before. He used the bank's key, and then he gestured for me to use mine. I put the small brass key into the lock. It turned smoothly. There was a soft click, and the small metal door popped open. Mr. Miller pulled out a long metal box. It was heavier than I expected. He carried it over to a small, private room. He placed it on a table and then looked at me. "I will leave you to it," he said. "Take all the time you need. Just let me know when you are finished." He closed the door behind him, and I was alone with the box. My hands were shaking again. This was the moment of truth. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. The box was not filled with money or jewelry. It was filled with journals. There were at least a dozen of them, all bound in worn leather. They were my grandmother's diaries. On top of the journals was a single, sealed envelope. My name, Lily, was written on the front in her familiar script. I picked up the envelope first. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter. I unfolded it and started to read. "My dearest Lily," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I hope you are not too sad. I have lived a long and full life. My greatest joy in these last years has been you. You brought light back into this old house and into my old heart. I can never thank you enough for your kindness and your care." Tears welled up in my eyes as I read her words. I had to pause for a moment to wipe them away. "I have left you this house," the letter continued. "I want you to be happy here. I want you to build a life for yourself within these walls. But I know that my daughter, your Aunt Karen, will not make it easy for you. Her heart has been poisoned by greed for a long time. She has always seen this house not as a home, but as a prize to be won. I am so sorry for the trouble she will cause you. I have tried to be fair. I have left her a substantial amount of money in my will. It is more than she deserves, but I did it to try and keep the peace. I fear it will not be enough for her. She will want the house, and she will fight you for it. That is why I have left you these journals. They are my testimony. They are the truth of the last 20 years. In these pages, you will find a record of Karen's behavior. Every time she asked for money, every time she tried to manipulate me, every cruel word she said when she thought no one was listening, I wrote it all down. I wanted there to be a record. I wanted someone to know the truth. I do not want you to use these to hurt her, Lily. I want you to use them to protect yourself. If she tries to take you to court, if she lies and says, I promised her the house, you will have proof. You will have my words. You will have the truth on your side. Be strong, my dear girl. You have a good and honest heart. Do not let her darkness dim your light. I love you always. Grandma Eleanor. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. I was crying freely now. They were tears of sadness for my grandmother, but also tears of gratitude. Even after she was gone, she was still protecting me. She had known exactly what Karen would do, and she had given me the tools to fight back. I looked at the stack of journals, 20 years of my aunt's behavior. It was a heavy burden. I did not want to read them. I did not want to know all the ugly details. But my grandmother had asked me to. She had trusted me with her story. I picked up the oldest journal, dated 20 years ago. I opened it to the first page, and I began to read. I spent the next several days in a state of shock. I read the journals one by one. I could not put them down. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. My grandmother's beautiful handwriting detailed a story of relentless greed and emotional abuse. It started small. Karen would call, crying about a bill she could not pay, a car repair, a medical expense for my cousin Sarah. Eleanor, with her generous heart, would always help. She would send a check. She would pay the bill directly. In her journal, she wrote, Karen is having a hard time. I'm happy to help my daughter. But soon, the requests became more frequent. The amounts grew larger. It was no longer about emergencies. It was about wants, a new car, a fancy vacation, a kitchen remodel. Karen would present these things as needs. She would say she was stressed. She would say she deserved a little happiness. She would make my grandmother feel guilty if she hesitated. Eleanor wrote about her growing unease. I feel like an open wallet to her, she wrote in one entry. She never asks how I am. She only calls when she needs something. Is this what a mother is for? Then, the comments about the house started. Karen would visit and talk about how big the house was for just one person. She would suggest that Eleanor should sell it and move into a small apartment. Then she could give Karen the money from the sale. This house is my home, Eleanor wrote. It is where I raised my children. It is where your father and I built our life. I will never sell it. When Karen realized her mother would not sell, she changed her tactics. She started talking about inheriting the house. She would make casual comments. When this house is mine, I am going to tear out these old carpets. When I live here, I will host big parties. Eleanor confronted her about it. She wrote down their conversation word for word. Karen, you must stop talking as if this house is already yours, Eleanor had said. But it will be, won't it? Karen had replied. I am your only daughter. Who else would you give it to? I have 2 children, Eleanor reminded her, referring to my mother. My mother was still alive at this point. But Lily's mom does not need it, Karen had argued. She is happy in her own home. I am the one who needs this house. Reading that part felt like a punch to the gut. My aunt had been trying to cut my mother out of her inheritance for years. She had always been jealous of my mom. The journals made that painfully clear. The entries got darker after my parents passed away. I was a teenager then, and I came to live with my grandmother. Karen had been furious. Now you have a replacement daughter, Karen had screamed at Eleanor over the phone. Eleanor had written down the whole ugly conversation. You are going to give everything to her, aren't you? You will leave me with nothing. Lily has lost her parents, Eleanor had written in her journal that night. She has nothing. How can Karen be so cruel? How can she be so selfish? As I got older and became my grandmother's caregiver, Karen's resentment grew. The journals were filled with examples. She would accuse me of stealing from Eleanor. She would tell other family members that I was isolating her, trying to turn her against her own daughter. One entry was particularly painful to read. It was from about a year before Eleanor passed away. Karen had come to visit. She had tried to get my grandmother to sign a document. It was a quitclaim deed, giving Karen ownership of the house immediately. She said it was to make things easier after I was gone, Eleanor wrote. She said it would save on taxes. She had her husband, David, with her. He is a slick talker. He tried to pressure me. He said I was being difficult. I told them no. I told them to leave. Karen started to cry. She said I did not love her. She said I had always loved Lily's mother more, and now I loved Lily more. She said I was a cruel mother. Her words were like daggers, but I did not give in. I saw the greed in her eyes. It was not about love. It was only about the house. I told her that if she ever brought it up again, I would write her out of my will completely. That must have scared her. The journals showed that she stopped asking for the house after that, but she did not stop asking for money. The last few entries were just a list of dates and amounts. Thousands and thousands of dollars in the last year of my grandmother's life. When I finished the last journal, I felt emotionally exhausted. I felt sick to my stomach. It was worse than I could have imagined. My aunt was not just greedy. She was a cruel and manipulative person who had tormented her own mother for years. The letter my grandmother had written me made so much more sense now. She had lived with this for so long. She had wanted me to know that I was not crazy. She had wanted me to know that what Karen was doing was wrong. I also felt a new kind of anger. It was a cold, hard anger. My aunt had not just insulted me at Thanksgiving. She had insulted my grandmother's memory. She had tried to paint Eleanor as a confused old woman who could be easily manipulated, but the journals showed the truth. My grandmother had been strong. She had been clear-eyed. She had seen her daughter for exactly who she was, and she had fought back in her own quiet way. She had left me this house. She had left me the truth. Now it was up to me to use it. Mr. Henderson's words came back to me. Be careful. Your aunt is not going to give up easily. I knew he was right. The scene at Thanksgiving was just the opening shot. A legal threat was coming. I was sure of it. I needed to prepare. I decided to call Mr. Henderson again. I needed to tell him what I had found. I needed his advice on what to do next. I took the journals and the letter and put them back in the safety deposit box. Then I drove to a copy shop. I spent over an hour making copies of every single page of every single journal. It cost a lot of money, but I knew it was worth it. I would keep the originals in the bank vault, where they were safe. I would use the copies. When I got home, I called the lawyer's office. Mr. Henderson, it is Lily Evans, I said when he answered. I opened the box. And? He asked. His voice was calm, but I could hear the curiosity in it. It was journals, I said. My grandmother's journals. 20 years of them. I thought it might be something like that. He said, She mentioned to me once that she was keeping a record. It is all in there, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Everything Karen did, the money, the lies, the manipulation. She even tried to get Grandma to sign the house over to her last year. I'm not surprised, he said quietly. I'm very sorry you had to read all of that. It was hard, I admitted. But I am glad I know the truth. Grandma also left me a letter. She said I should use the journals to protect myself. That sounds like Eleanor, he said. She was a smart woman. So, what is your next move? That is why I'm calling you, I said. Uncle David threatened to take me to court. I think they are going to contest the will. What do I do? You wait, he said. Let them make the first move. They will have to file a formal complaint. When they do, we will respond, and we will have your grandmother's own words as our primary evidence. It will be very difficult for them to argue against her own diaries. So I just sit here and wait for them to sue me? I asked. It felt so passive. I wanted to do something. I wanted to fight back. For now, yes, he said. Do not engage with them. Do not answer their calls. Do not let them draw you into another fight. Let everything go through me. The moment you receive any legal papers, you call me. His advice made sense. I was too emotional right now. I needed to let a professional handle it. Okay, I said. I will do that. And Lily, he added just before he hung up, you are in a very strong position. The truth is on your side. Do not ever forget that. The next week was quiet. I did not hear a word from Karen or David. I started to wonder if they had given up. Maybe the threat was just a bluff. Maybe they had realized they did not have a case. But then, on a Friday afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was a man in a uniform. He handed me a thick envelope. My name was on the front. I did not need to open it to know what it was. I had been served. My hands shook as I took the envelope inside. I sat down at the kitchen table and tore it open. It was a formal legal notice. Karen Miller was officially contesting the will of Eleanor Evans. The document was full of legal jargon, but the message was clear. It claimed that my grandmother was not of sound mind when she made the will. It claimed that she was under undue influence from me. It claimed that I had systematically isolated her from her family in order to steal her assets. The lies were breathtaking. Every accusation was the exact opposite of the truth. Karen was the one who had tried to isolate her. Karen was the one who had tried to steal her assets. I felt a hot surge of rage. How dare she? How dare she twist the story like this? I picked up the phone and called Mr. Henderson. I read him the accusations from the lawsuit. He listened patiently. "This is standard procedure," he said when I was done. "They are throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. None of it is true, and they have no evidence to back it up." "But we have evidence," I said. "We have the journals." "Exactly," he said. "Now it is our turn to respond. I will draft a reply. I will need you to come to my office on Monday. We will go through the journals together and select the most powerful entries to include in our response. We are going to show them that we are not afraid of a fight." "Okay," I said. I felt a sense of purpose. The waiting was over. The fight had begun. I will be there. Over the weekend, I went through the copies of the journals again. This time I was not just reading for emotion. I was reading for evidence. I used sticky notes to mark the most damning passages, the specific requests for money, the conversations about the house, the failed attempt to get her to sign the deed, the accusations against me. By the time I was done, the books were filled with colorful tabs. It was a meticulous record of my aunt's greed. On Monday, I went to Mr. Henderson's office. It was a large, quiet office filled with law books. He greeted me warmly and showed me to a conference room. I laid the copied journals out on the big table. "This is incredible," he said as he looked at the sheer volume of them. Eleanor was very thorough. We spent the next 3 hours going through my notes. He was a skilled lawyer. He knew exactly what to look for. He pointed out passages that showed my grandmother's clear state of mind. He highlighted entries that directly contradicted the claims in Karen's lawsuit. "This is more than enough," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Their case is built on lies. We have the truth in your grandmother's own hand. I do not think they will want this to go to a courtroom. When their lawyer sees this, he will likely advise them to drop the case." "What if they do not?" I asked. "What if they are so blinded by greed that they keep pushing?" "Then we go to court," he said simply. "And we will win. But it will be expensive and emotionally draining for you. Our goal is to make them back down before it gets to that point." He explained his plan. We would submit a formal response to their lawsuit. In that response, we would deny all of their claims, and we would attach a few selected copies from the journals as evidence. Just a few to start. A shot across the bow, as he called it. We would let them know that we had more. Much more. "We do not want to show them our whole hand just yet," he explained. "We give them a taste of what we have. We let them know that if they proceed, all of this will become public record. All of these ugly details about your aunt's behavior will be read out in open court." I understood. He was using the journals as a weapon, but also as a shield. He was trying to protect me from a long, painful trial. "Karen cares a lot about her image," I said. "She likes to pretend she is the perfect daughter, the perfect mother. She would hate for people to know the truth about how she treated her own mom." "Exactly," Mr. Henderson said with a small smile. "That is our leverage." He drafted the response that week. He sent me a copy to approve. It was perfect. It was firm, professional, and it hinted at the mountain of evidence we were holding in reserve. I gave him the okay to file it. Now all we could do was wait for their response. The ball was in their court. I tried to go about my life. I went to work. I saw my friends. I tried not to think about the lawsuit. But it was always there, in the back of my mind, a dark cloud hanging over me. A week went by, then 2. I did not hear anything. The silence was unnerving. I called Mr. Henderson. "Have they responded?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "That is a good sign. It means their lawyer is probably talking some sense into them. He knows they have a weak case, especially now that he has seen a sample of the journals." "So, what happens now?" I asked. "They have a few options," he explained. "They can drop the lawsuit. They can try to negotiate a settlement. Or they can be foolish and decide to proceed. We just have to wait and see which path they choose." The call I was expecting finally came a few days later. But it was not from Mr. Henderson. It was from my Uncle David. His name flashed on my phone screen. My first instinct was to ignore it, just as the lawyer had advised. But something made me answer. I wanted to hear what he had to say. "What do you want?" I asked. My voice was cold. "Lily, we need to talk," he said. His tone was completely different from the last time we spoke. The aggression was gone. He sounded tired, almost defeated. "I have nothing to say to you," I said. You should be talking to my lawyer." "Please, just listen," he said. "Karen is a mess. We saw the response your lawyer filed. We saw the pages from her mother's diary." He paused. I did not say anything. I just waited. "We did not know she wrote all that down," he said quietly. "We had no idea." "Now you do," I said. "Now you know the truth." "Look, this has all been a big misunderstanding," he started to say. I cut him off. "A misunderstanding?" I asked, my voice rising. "You accuse me of stealing. You accuse me of manipulating a sick woman. You filed a lawsuit full of lies. That is not a misunderstanding, David. That is a deliberate attack." "Karen was just upset," he said, trying to backtrack. "She was grieving. She was not thinking clearly." "She has been thinking this way for 20 years, I shot back. "It is all in the journals. This is not about grief. It is about greed. And you enabled her. You stood right by her side and threatened me." He was silent for a long moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. "What do you want, Lily?" he finally asked. His voice was small. "I want you to drop the lawsuit," I said. "Immediately. And I want a written apology from both of you. An apology for the lies you told about me, and for the way you treated my grandmother." "And if we do that?" he asked. "Will you keep the rest of those journals private?" There it was, the real reason for his call. He was not sorry. He was scared. He was scared of the truth coming out. He was scared of Karen's reputation being ruined. "Drop the lawsuit," I repeated, "and send me the apology. Then we can talk about the journals." I did not make any promises. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted them both to understand that I was in control now. My grandmother had given me the power, and I was going to use it. "I will talk to Karen," he said, "and our lawyer. I will call you back." He hung up. I stood in my kitchen, my heart pounding. It was working. Mr. Henderson's plan was working. They were scared. They were backing down. I felt a sense of victory, but it was mixed with a deep sadness. This was my family, my aunt and uncle. And I was at war with them. My grandmother had never wanted this. She had only wanted to protect me. I thought about her letter. "I do not want you to use these to hurt her, Lily. I want you to use them to protect yourself." I had to remember that. This was not about revenge. It was about justice. Justice for me and justice for Eleanor. A few days later, a package arrived by courier. It was from Karen and David's lawyer. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a legal notice stating that they were officially withdrawing their lawsuit. All claims were dropped. The second was a letter. It was an apology. I read the letter carefully. It was short and stiff. It sounded like a lawyer had written it. It said they regretted any distress their actions had caused. It did not admit to lying. It did not sound sincere at all. But it was a written apology. It was what I'd asked for. I called Mr. Henderson and told him the news. "Congratulations, Lily," he said. "You won. You did not have to set foot in a courtroom." "So it is over?" I asked. "It is over," he confirmed. "They have no more legal claim to the estate. The house is yours, free and clear." I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I had been living with this stress for weeks. I had been so afraid of losing my home, of having my grandmother's name dragged through the mud. Now it was finally done. But there was one loose end, the journals. What was I going to do with them? That night, I received another call. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" I said. "Lily, it is me. Karen." Her voice was quiet. It was a voice I had never heard from her before. It was small and fragile. All the anger and entitlement were gone. "What do you want, Karen?" I asked. I did not try to hide the coldness in my voice. I wanted to talk to you," she said, "without the lawyers, without David." I was suspicious. This had to be another manipulation, another trick. "I do not think we have anything to talk about," I said. "Please," she said. And for the first time, I heard something that sounded like real desperation in her voice. "Please, Lily, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I agreed. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "Those diaries," she started. "Mom's diaries. Are you going to show them to people?" So that was it. Just like David, she was only worried about her reputation. She was not sorry for what she did. She was only sorry she got caught. "Why shouldn't I?" I asked her. "Why shouldn't the whole family know what you did to her? Why shouldn't they know the truth?" "Because it would kill me," she whispered. "It would ruin my life. She would never look at me the same way again. No one would. You should have thought about that before you spent 20 years tormenting your mother," I said bluntly. "You should have thought about that before you accused me of being a thief in front of our entire family." She started to cry. This time, the tears did not sound fake. They sounded like the tears of a broken person. "I know," she sobbed. "I know I was wrong. I was so jealous of you, of your mother. Mom always seemed to love you more. And then she gave you the house, the one thing I ever wanted." "She gave me the house because I loved her," I said. "Not for what she could give me. I took care of her. I was there for her." "Where were you, Karen? You were only there when you wanted money." "I know," she said again, her voice choked with sobs. "I know. I was a terrible daughter. I see that now. Reading those pages, seeing my own words, my own actions, through her eyes. It was like looking in a mirror, and I hated what I saw." I was silent. I did not know what to say. Was this real? Was it possible that she was actually feeling remorse? "What do you want from me, Karen?" I asked again. "I want your forgiveness," she said. "But I know I do not deserve it. So I will ask for something else. Please, do not destroy me with those journals. Keep them private. I will never bother you again. I will never ask you for anything. I will stay out of your life. Just, please, do not let that be my mother's last legacy, a record of how awful her daughter was." I thought about it for a long time. I thought about the pain she had caused my grandmother. I thought about the stress she had caused me. Part of me wanted to make her pay. Part of me wanted to send copies of the journals to every single member of our family. I wanted them all to know what a monster she was. But then I thought about my grandmother again. Her letter said, "I do not want you to use these to hurt her." She had wanted me to protect myself, not to get revenge. The lawsuit was dropped. The house was safe. I was protected. Maybe that was enough. Maybe continuing this war would only create more pain. Maybe the best way to honor my grandmother was to find a way to move on, to live a peaceful life in the house she had given me. "Okay, Karen," I said finally. My voice was tired. I will not show the journals to anyone. I could hear her let out a long, shuddering breath of relief. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Lily. But this is not forgiveness, I said, my voice firm and clear. I do not forgive you for what you did to her or to me. This is a truce. You stay out of my life, and this secret stays with us. But if you ever break that truce, if you ever come after me or my home again, I will not hesitate. Do you understand? I understand, she said quickly. I promise. You will never hear from me again. And I never did. Karen and David moved away a few months later. I heard from Uncle Mark that they had to sell their own house to pay for their legal fees and the debts they had accumulated. They moved to a small apartment in a different state. Sarah went with them, but I heard she eventually went to college and tried to build her own life away from her parents. I kept my promise. I put the original journals back in the safety deposit box. I took the copies I had made and I burned them in my fireplace one cold winter night. As I watched the pages turn to ash, I felt a sense of closure. The ugly story they told was over. It did not need to be read again. I lived in my grandmother's house. I made it my own. I painted the walls. I planted a new garden in the spring. I filled the quiet rooms with laughter and friends. I thought of my grandmother every day. I was grateful for her love, for her strength, and for her wisdom. She had known that the truth was the most powerful weapon of all, and she had trusted me to use it wisely. She had given me more than just a house. She had given me a future, free from the shadows of the past. But there was still that one last clause in the will, the one that had started this whole journey. The final disposition of the contents of my safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 312, is to be handled solely at the discretion of my granddaughter, Lily Evans. The journals were the main content, but there was something else in the box. Tucked at the very bottom, beneath the last journal, was another thick envelope. It was sealed with wax, and it was addressed to Mr. Henderson. On the front, my grandmother had written, "To be opened only after the matter with my daughter Karen is fully and finally resolved." After everything had settled down, after Karen and David were gone, I took the envelope to Mr. Henderson's office. I felt a sense of nervous anticipation. What other secrets had my grandmother left behind? I handed him the envelope. "I think this is for you," I said. He looked at the front. He recognized Eleanor's handwriting immediately. He took a letter opener from his desk and carefully broke the wax seal. He pulled out a multi-page document and a shorter, handwritten letter. He read the letter to himself first. His eyebrows shot up. He looked at me. A strange expression on his face. It was a mix of surprise and admiration. "Lily," he said slowly, "your grandmother was one of the most remarkable women I have ever known." "What is it?" I asked, my curiosity getting the better of me. "It is an addendum to the will," he said. "A final instruction. It seems Eleanor anticipated every possible outcome of this conflict with your aunt." He then read the letter aloud to me. "Dear Mr. Henderson," it said, "if you are reading this, it means that Lily has found my journals and used them to defend herself against Karen's claim to my estate. It also means that the matter is now concluded. I have one final piece of business I need you to attend to. You will recall the large cash inheritance I set aside for Karen? My will states that this is to be given to her. However, this addendum provides a new condition. I have always believed in giving people second chances. But I have also come to believe that actions must have consequences. Therefore, I am invoking a morality clause tied to this inheritance. My daughter, Karen, was to receive the money only if she accepted the terms of my will with grace and respect. If she chose to contest the will, if she chose to make false accusations against Lily, if she chose to cause strife and pain after my death, then she has forfeited her right to that inheritance." I gasped. I could not believe what I was hearing. Mr. Henderson continued reading. "The journals, which by now you have seen, serve as a record of her character. The lawsuit she filed serves as proof that her character has not changed. She failed this final test. Therefore, the money designated for her is to be redirected. The letter went on to specify exactly where the money should go. Half of it was to go to the local animal shelter, a cause my grandmother had always supported. The other half, I held my breath as Mr. Henderson read the final line. The other half is to be given to my granddaughter, Lily Evans. She has endured so much. She has honored my memory. She has protected my home. This is not a reward. It is a reimbursement for the pain and suffering her aunt has caused her. It is a nest egg for the peaceful future she so richly deserves. I sat there in stunned silence. The amount of money set aside for Karen was significant. It was life-changing. I had never expected this. I had just been fighting to keep my home. I had not been thinking about money at all. So Karen gets nothing, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. According to this legally notarized addendum, she gets nothing, Mr. Henderson confirmed. Her actions, specifically the act of filing a lawsuit against you, triggered this clause. She disinherited herself. A slow smile spread across my face. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. My grandmother had not only protected me, she had delivered the ultimate consequence to her greedy daughter. Karen's actions, driven by her desire for more, had resulted in her getting nothing at all. It was a beautiful, poetic justice. Your grandmother was playing chess, Mr. Henderson said, shaking his head in amazement, while everyone else was playing checkers. The process took a few more weeks, but it was all handled by the lawyers. The funds were transferred. I made a large donation to the animal shelter in my grandmother's name. They were so grateful. They used the money to build a new wing for the older animals, the ones that were harder to adopt. They put up a small plaque by the entrance, the Eleanor Evans Wing, in memory of a kind and wise woman. I went to the dedication ceremony. It felt good. It felt right. The rest of the money went into my bank account. For the first time in my life, I was financially secure. I did not have to worry about bills. I did not have to worry about the cost of maintaining the big house. I had freedom. I had peace of mind. I never told anyone in the family about the final clause. I never told them that Karen had lost her inheritance because of her own actions. As far as they knew, she had just dropped the lawsuit and moved away. It was better that way. There was no need for more drama. The war was over. I had won. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my grandmother's favorite chair, the old leather poetry book in my lap. I think about the incredible gift she gave me. Not just the house, not just the money. She gave me the truth. She gave me justice. And she taught me that sometimes the best way to fight a monster is not to become one yourself, but to simply let their own greed and ugliness be the cause of their own downfall. My aunt had cried that I had stolen her inheritance. But in the end, the only person who had stolen anything from Karen was Karen herself. And that was a lesson I knew she would have to live with for the rest of her life. The house was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet. It was the sound of a battle won and a new life beginning